So the Proteas, the current World Test champions, are currently out in Zimbabwe, taking on the Zimbabwean team in that first Test match. After the third day of action, it is Zimbabwe that currently need 505 runs to actually win this Test match. Some would say it's quite an impossible task given the fact that the Proteas are high on confidence and they've played well in the first 2 days. But we've got Mpho, the man who follows cricket quite closely, the man who was out at Lord's enjoying the celebrations with the Proteas, who'll tell us a little bit more about the first 2 days of action. Mpho, my brother, how are you doing?
Good, and you, Aaron? How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Let's jump straight into the action after the second day of action between the Proteas and Zimbabwe. Is it even possible that Zimbabwe could win this Test match? Let's start there.
Look, it's highly unlikely. The way modern cricket is going, you never know. But they've got 2 days to bat, day four and day five, and the chances are very unlikely. It's all in South Africa's favour. Getting to 500 or with this Zim team may be very tough, even with the weakened South African bowling attack.
You talk about a weakened South African bowling attack, but I first want to touch on the batting. The batting has been absolutely incredible. We have to talk about Luandre Pretorius, the 19-year-old, who's become the youngest, I believe, youngest batsman to score 153 runs in an opening innings for the Proteas. Talk to me about his rise, because I know that you follow these young golfers young batsmen quite closely in the game of cricket.
Yes, Luandre has been in the SA under 19 setup over the past year or so and a bit. He has been coming in leaps and bounds, but what impressed us a lot was during SA 20 when he got his opportunity. He was very explosive at the top and scored a lot of runs, scored half centuries and nearly scored a century in SA 20, which led to his franchise, the Titans, giving him more opportunities. And with those opportunities, he has taken them across all formats. He averages 70 in first class cricket. Only for this season, he scored 100 on debut, batting at six, with the same high, positive, aggressive nature of batting. He is possibly the next big thing out of South African cricket. I don't want to put that moniker on him, but I think he's the best out of the youngsters that we have right now, including Devon Brevis on the other side. He is composed. He plays his cricket. He bats really well. Makes the right decisions a lot of times, and it makes it very hard for bowlers to get him out. And you saw that against Zimbabwe. He came in when South Africa were 23 for three and knuckled down. And he was still aggressive. He didn't come into his shell, and he scored 153 runs over 160 balls, which is also a testament to who he is, right? He's a quick scorer. He's a destructive batter, and at 19, it's unbelievable.
You talk about him being 19, and that's incredible, and I fully agree. But you also mentioned one name there, Devon Brevis. That's a player that we've been watching quite closely over the last 2 years or so. He's done incredibly well in the shorter format of the game. A lot of South Africans have been asking for him to actually be moved up into that Protea setup. It seems that the head coaches at the Proteas are a little bit more patient with him, but we're also seeing dividends because you look at his performance in the IPL, you look at his performance in the SA 20, and you can see that he definitely has everything he needs to be a top batsman. And even in this Test match, he's now being brought into this Protea setup. In that first innings, he actually scored 51 runs. How have you made or analyzed his performance and just his journey throughout professional cricket so far?
Look, he was called Baby AB from the moment he left high school. He loves AB de Villiers. He tries to bat like him and emulate him. That first SA 20 was supposed to be his coming out party, but it never happened. He's been up and down, and to a certain extent, growth is never linear, right? You're going to have ups and downs, and he's had a downtime after the highs that he got, obviously got selected in the IPL, shone a little bit. But once bowlers got to know who he is, it became harder for him to kind of establish himself. And that's what cricket is. Cricket at a young age, you have to learn your game. You have to learn how bowlers play and get accustomed to it. And to a certain extent, he's starting to get there. He's not a finished product yet. He's starting to get there. He is also talented, but hasn't had the ability to be consistent like Luandre Pretorius at a young age. This last season, he then became a little bit more consistent in the fact that he became more aggressive. He just lent into his aggression and tried to go. I think previously maybe he was trying to figure out how to bat, how to adjust his game to different situations, whereas just leaning into his aggression would help. And he's also had a great 4-day series in South Africa, as well as the One Day Cup as well for the Titans. And so he was always knocking on the door. Went to Hampshire. The thing with Diego Brevis is he hits the most incredible sixes and fours, and if that's going to be his game, that's great, and as an asset that we're going to need to use. But the growth still needs to come through, and we saw that with his dismissal in the second innings. He wouldn't want to see that. Just swiping across the line agriculturally is not the way to go about at this level. And with both the youngsters, it's going to take a long time for them to get up to speed. But we're seeing some fruits of their talent. And not saying that they should be thrown into the first team or the A team, but I think they've given themselves an opportunity to be in the system.
You talk about young players moving their way into the system. We have to talk about Kwena Mapaka. We know that he's one of those players that almost has the similar type of pressure that Kagiso Rabada had when he started. We are expecting him to perform at the highest level. Him getting that IPL call-up adds a little bit more pressure. Now we actually get to see him in a full test match for the Proteas. What have you made of Kwena Mapaka? Also one of the youngsters that comes through the under-19 setup for the Proteas.
I think his debut test match against Pakistan was a lot better. I thought he bowled a lot better there in Newlands, in the New Year's test. This test, he's felt like he's been a bit off colour. And it happens. Bad days happen in the office all the time. And look, I think we just need to taper our expectations that he's the next Kagiso. No one will ever be the next Kagiso. The difference between Gwen and Kagiso is the consistency. Kagiso has been consistent from day one. Excuse me, he doesn't have these spells where it becomes erratic. But Gwena's showing that he's still a little bit erratic. What we love from Gwena is the raw pace. We want someone to keep bowling it at 150. He reminds me of a Gerald Coetzee. Gerald was, I think to a certain extent, maybe he still is a little bit erratic, but he's kind of worked on being a lot more accurate, and that's what he needs to work on. You need to learn to bowl the ball in the same spot over and over again. It came quickly to Kagiso, but to Gwena, what Gwena needs is he needs to bowl with senior bowlers. A game like this, I think, does him an injustice, largely because he's bowling with bowlers who are also in a new situation, right? You got debutants, you got guys on one cap, and he's not getting to bowl alongside a Kagiso or alongside a Lungi, which is why it was really tough when Lungi left, because my thing with Gwena is, and it happened at SA20, he can't be the guy to lead your attack at 19 in a better dominant sport. You're going to need someone who's old enough to kind of take the burden of leadership. And then I kind of felt in that first innings, he wanted to make things happen. And he forced himself into that. Whereas I think hopefully today, and yesterday bowled really well. I thought he was a lot calmer. He bowled to his plans, but sometimes he's going to have to learn that sometimes one type of ball is more than enough. All you need is a second variation. He's got like 3 or 4. So he just needs to build a plan and do that instead of just thinking he can just run in and hit the deck hard and wickets will happen. And so that's the value of having a senior bowler in the side to kind of rein him in. And we hope this second innings he'll be a lot better, because in that first innings you kind of felt that he was trying to do something for the team, and instead of letting the game come to him. And sometimes that's exuberance of youth. He's definitely a find for the future, but yeah, just lots of learning to do.
Most certainly, you talk about learning. One of the bowlers that has done a lot of learning in the first class format of the game. That's a bowler that a lot of people were actually quite surprised by when he took first 4 wickets in that first 3 wickets, pardon me, in that first innings for Zimbabwe. That's Cody Yusuf. What have you made of him, and especially him moving from first class level to now joining the main Proteas team?
Look, if you look at the best fast bowlers in the country last season in the last 2 years, it's Cody Yusuf. What is one of them, one of the top two, right? And so Cody's done a really great job in being consistent and learning how to be consistent and be a wicket taker for the Lions. The Lions lose a lot of their bowlers to the Proteas, and he's always the guy to come up next in line. And he's done a really great job, even if against the Proteas themselves, to take wickets, to be consistent. And he's like he's of a seam bowler. He's the second highest wicket taker of the seam bowlers in the country in the 4-day series. He took wickets at an average of 22, which is something. And the other thing we like about Cody is that he's fast and he's skiddy. And it's what we've realized with cricket is you got to be cranking it up at 140, 150. And we think Cody is that guy, and he does that really well. And he's the next guy up. From a South African cricket perspective, and he's done it. All the other guys who are in and around there don't have the same pace as Cody, and what we were looking for the next crop of fast bowlers, because a lot of our fast bowlers are injured. Nando Burger is injured, Anu Hoke is injured, Joe Kitsia coming back from injury, or Burger as well coming back from injury. So Cody Yusuf is fighting for a spot, and he's done really well so far. And you can see that he's learned so much. Even he went to England to go play for Durham in England in county cricket a couple of months ago. And yeah, very, very reliable bowler for the Lions, and really good to see that he's gotten his Proteas call up.
You talk about Proteas call up over there. I'd love to talk about the new captain. We know that Themba Bavuma is out with that hamstring injury. Keshav Maharaj gets an opportunity to captain the Proteas in this test series against Zimbabwe. What have you made of his captaincy? He's a player who's always been consistent with the ball, but now it's almost a different role that he has to play within the team.
Look, Keshav's always been part of the leadership team in the Proteas setup. He's captained the Proteas in ODIs and in T20s, and he's one of the smartest cricketers they have in the side. And it made sense for him to get the captaincy with Themba necessarily not being available. And it's a great opportunity for him, because I think, you know, it's an honor for you to represent your country, but it's an even bigger honor for you to captain your country. And couldn't have gone to a better guy. He's gotten to 200 test wickets in this test, which is the most of any spinner in South African cricket, and it puts himself up there as the best spinner ever that South Africa has produced. And so, yeah, he's a really good captain, and you can see with the decisions that he's making, he's very patient. He's not erratic. He doesn't chase the ball around, and he's a calm and quiet leader. But the players seem to feed off of him.
Most certainly. As we wrap up the conversation, let's talk about the love for Test cricket. For me personally, after the Proteas won the Test World Championship, it's almost like Test cricket has been back in the spotlight again. For the last few years, a lot of people have been talking about the love for Test cricket is slowly but surely dying out. People love the shorter format of the game. It's more exciting. It's more thrilling. Is that World Test Championship victory a vital component to us falling in love again with Test cricket? Because we also know that the SA20 will be starting a little bit earlier in December this year, and a lot of people have been complaining that we want Test cricket to come back.
It's not about wanting Test cricket to come back. It's the ICC's Feature Tours program that will enable that for Test cricket to come back. Obviously, from a revenue perspective, Test cricket is the most expensive format of the game. T20 is the most lucrative. It brings in more money. And broadcasters want T20 and ODIs. They don't want Test cricket. So that's the other conundrum we have. We're fighting broadcasters. We're fighting other unions, other countries. The issue we had with this current cycle, is that South Africa are only going to play their first home game next year in August, and Test match in August. And that's, I think, against Australia. And that kind of puts a dampener on everything, because the country's not going to see the Test team for an entire year in their reign as World Test Championships and World Test Champions, and it's only 2 years. But that's the way the cookies crumbled. Like, there's nothing CSA can do. The program is is set up and the calendar is already filled up. The same arguments everyone's complaining about soccer and how the calendar's filled up. Same thing with cricket. And to a certain extent, SA20 brings in a little bit more money into to thingy, and the Proteas playing T20s and ODIs brings in more money, and so it's a sad indictment of what's happening. But we'll get Test cricket back again. We've got England next year here in August, in December, and we've also got Australia in August. We're also going to be playing the West Indies as well, sometime in next year, maybe at the beginning of 2027, and yeah, right now it's overseas tours and people are going to just have to watch the Proteas on their TV, which helps because if more people are watching on TV, it brings more money into the game. And CSA can then say, well, look, people are watching test matches. We want more of them. But right now, at this point in time, what this team did was amazing. It was incredible. We hope it does change, but change is not going to come tomorrow. It's going to take a couple of years for us to see the fruits of what this win actually meant to South Africa.
Most certainly. Paul Motlana, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the fourth day of action between the Proteas and Zimbabwe, and we'll touch base with you soon as we continue to monitor the Proteas out in Zimbabwe.
Thanks, Aaron.
So the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull circuit happened this past weekend, and yet again, some would say more of the same. McLaren on top, Lando Norris securing yet another victory this season. Most of us were quite happy to see that there wasn't any scuffles like we saw at the Canadian Grand Prix between himself and his teammate. But to take us through everything that happened at the Austrian Grand Prix, we've got Prince Ndweni, a man who loves Formula One and a Formula One podcaster. He joins us this morning. Prince, my brother, how are you doing?
Doing great, Aaron. Doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Some would say Formula One is a little bit boring. I mean, last season we saw Max Verstappen doing his thing. This season seems to be a McLaren show. Your analysis on Lando Norris winning the race. I mean, after that qualifying session, he mentioned that that was the best lap he's ever had in qualifying. So from that point, we knew that things should go well for McLaren, and he secured the victory.
No, 100%, 100%. With Formula One, it's interesting because you can't please everyone. You won't please all 10 teams. You won't please all groups of fans. And every 5 years, there's just one team that gets it when it comes to the rules and regulations. And for this particular 5 years, that team has been McLaren. And so it's a long-term thing. And that speaks to budget. It speaks to the size of the team. It speaks to the talent at hand. Because Aston Martin, for example, have a budget that could go toe-to-toe with McLaren, but the talent available, not quite the picture. They've been trying to poach from the bigger teams. Every sort of staff shuffle that happened a couple of years ago, major ones at the very least, Aston Martin was there to try and get them to come to the team and try and put a solid team together. So McLaren just got it right over the past couple of years. So the dividends are going to pay off in the long term. It's mid to long term how they pay off. And unfortunately, people won't be pleased with that. But as for Lando's performance, it's typical and expected of him to be here. It's about time because Oscar Piastri was looking like he wanted to run away with it. So Lando has to answer. He has to swing back because it is a two-horse race, it seems, at the moment when it comes to the championship. So they definitely have to make sure that at least the Lando side of the garage have to make sure that Oscar doesn't get too many blows in because psychologically it's going to have a big impact going into the rest of the season.
You talk about a big psychological impact. I mean, Oscar Piastri, he finished second this past weekend. But talk to me about the dynamics between the two drivers, because at least to me, the way that I look at Formula One is you've got a number one driver, then you've got a number two driver, and everyone plays their position. We know, for example, at Red Bull that Max Verstappen is team captain. Whatever he does goes. So it's almost like the two drivers are battling each other. Lando is taking on his teammate, where to me logically I would say that no, we need a number one driver, because what happened in Canada is a massive problem.
Yeah. No, I think that's always been the pardon me. That's always been the issue with Formula One, the challenge, in that you have a team, however, within the team, there's a competition. And the nature and beauty, I would say, also of Formula One is that it has to embrace that. And that's a balance that will never quite be struck in a satisfying way a lot of the time. So it's like you just got to take it with the package. As to how McLaren have to manage that, well, it's very difficult because these racing drivers are toe to toe.
Yeah.
They are pound for pound. They're in the same weight division, same everything, and I think it swings a bit more in Oscar's favor, but fractionally, but it does swing more in Oscar's favor, and it's more on the psychological side, on the temperament side, more than anything, which can easily come back Lando's way if he tweaks one or two things. Similar to how in 2016 Nico Rosberg was able to go back to the factory and sort of reset himself and get into trim shape, and that's how he took the championship. Some would argue there was a bit of assistance, but hey, we're not dwelling on that. So yeah, it's a tough one. They have to embrace that they're there to race. So that's then the principle behind the papaya rules. You'll hear that often when it comes to Oscar and Lando, and they have to let them be. It's just now. It's easier to let them race now. Later on in the years, where it's going to be tough. So it's really going to take quite something in terms of management from the likes of Andreas Stella. I think Zach Brown, he's a unique CEO in that he's quite involved when it comes to the inner workings. It seems the inner workings of the team itself. I wonder if he's going to have a hand as well in how that is managed, because he's seen Lando from literally as a young Carter into where he is now. So, well, very, very interesting dynamic that's coming when the championship is getting closer to a close.
Let me put you on the spot, Prince. I mean, you're wearing red. Some would argue that it looks like orange. So, I don't know. You're like in between. Let's make you the team principal at McLaren, because at some point, someone has to make a decision, especially when it gets to like the last two races, and now you want your drivers to be careful. You are team principal. Who's your number one driver and why?
I'm team
Wow.
And you
that is a
see,
tough one. That is firstly, I've got to give you credit. That is the most unique line of questioning when it comes to this that I've gotten. It's always who's going to win, but when you're team principal, you have to choose a racing driver. I think between Lando and Oscar, I would choose Oscar.
why?
I would choose Oscar. It's it's a temperament thing. I think Oscar he can go in with any racing driver and he can go against any racing driver, against any circumstance without you getting the sense that he's going to hold back. No, there isn't a sense of, no, shouldn't. He is fully committed and you can see it. He really does not care and holds no punches. Whereas at times with Lando can be like that as well, but a lot of the time he doesn't choose that. So in a situation where either of these racing drivers are given a split second to make a decision that's going to make or break the championship, I reckon Oscar will be the one to actually take that championship. But as a team principal, though, the politically correct answer is to say I don't choose.
No, we want the answer, Prince. Choose one.
As a team principal, I can't choose. What do you mean?
Let's move on
But I
to
think
continue.
I think it's circumstantial. At the moment, you can't choose, but because they're toe to toe. In August, September, then I would make my choice, and I'm saying right now my choice would be Oscar.
All right, we'll keep you accountable. Let's move on to Ferrari. I mean, every Formula One fan has been looking at Lewis Hamilton. We know that the big shift to Ferrari was announced last season, and this season it's almost like he's adapting to the vehicle. He praised the improvements heading into the weekend. He was slightly happy, but performance is there but not actually there. He's close to the podium but he's not on the podium. He finished fourth this past weekend. Your analysis on Lewis Hamilton in that red Ferrari, and a lot of fans are asking, is this the car that can deliver his 8th world championship?
is this the car that can deliver, and is it the team that can deliver as well? Because someone like Lewis Hamilton or a world champion generally looks at the inner workings of the team and the structure that supports his campaign. And so you'll find their criticisms are more than just, this car's undrivable. So you'll hear that frequently, but it goes deeper. It goes down to my communication with my engineers. It goes down to the exchange of information when it comes to progression and data that is collected on the car. It goes down to how much work is done in the factory, background work in between. All of that, I think, is up for question here as opposed to the car itself. And the reason why then you might see Lewis Hamilton's tune kind of changing now is because those details, I think the entirety of the details are starting to show improvement or taking the shape of what a world championship winning racing driver would expect from a team that is either campaigning for a world championship, that is defending a world championship, or in a fight for a world championship. So I think that's where the focus should be. The car, yes, but that's like maybe a third of the entire three-piece jigsaw. I think you should look at the inner workings of the team as well. The car, I mean, it came in with a floor upgrade, which a number of the other teams did in any case. And also, Austria is a very it's easy on the sort of assessments and criticisms you can give because of the layout of the circuit. I mean, it's through mainly three high speed sections, and then you've got a tighter section in between turns four and the final corner. But other than that, it's really a straight, almost L or U-shaped circuit. So the challenges there are not necessarily reflective of what they'll face throughout the entire season. But it is a good place to test that floor, and a lot of the teams did, and they didn't seem to be making much improvements, but Ferrari looked really good. But I think the big picture, the team needs to improve. The car can upgrade every race, but if the team itself doesn't improve, then questionable.
You talk about the team improving. I mean, we were at the Red Bull Ring this past weekend, and a team that is really struggling. I mean, when you look at the last 4 years, Red Bull have been the team to watch. And they struggled this past weekend in Austria. I mean, unfortunately, a DNF for Max Verstappen, who's the leader, or let's call it the captain of that team, unfortunately. But also, like, the challenges that they've had at Red Bull, it feels as though this is a season that they want to forget. I mean, that second driver, they started off with Liam Lawson. He only survived 2 races. I mean, now they've brought in Yuki Tsunoda. Give me your analysis of what the Red Bull team is going through, because so often we talk about it in sports that not every season is going to be a good season. Is this a season that we can just say, let's forget about Red Bull and let's focus on McLaren?
Uh, Red Bull could turn it around. I mean, it's a long season, but the thing is, the first third of the season really sets the tone for what's going to go on for the rest. They're not going to put in the same weight and commitment on development and upgrades in the last 6 months of the year as compared to or the last 8 months of the year as compared to now the first 4 or 5. So it is telling where they're at the moment. So you can expect, I think, slightly pulled punches in terms of their expectations going from track to track. But they still are a decent performing team because for the majority of this first 5 races, apart from the whole teammate dynamic, they look like the car could be there for fights. It stopped looking like the underdog to a certain extent. But with that, it must be the asterisk that is Max Verstappen needs to be mentioned because Max has created this dynamic when Red Bull is not there because of his ability to drive a car to its absolute capabilities, right to the limit of what it can do, which is a very rare ability. And a few racing drivers can do that, where some of them it takes seasons for them to get the car to do that, whereas Max somehow has a quicker turnaround rate for that. He's then put Red Bull in this dynamic where, and this has been my perspective for some time, that they can get comfortable with building 70% capable car, 80% capable car, knowing that Max is there to fill in the deficit a lot of the time. They may not consciously plan this, but they may push their hardest, and when now debriefing and find that there's a deficit of 30 or 40%, but somehow Max made up for it and outperformed the car's ability. Is- Does the debrief last that long? You know, when the champagne is sticky on the table, hey, we've been celebrating podiums, so should we really be pushing that hard? Is my question. That may have crept in a couple of times when Red Bull's car was lacking and was not there, but Max was able to just get it over the line. Does he always get the car that he wants? He did for a time when he was dominating, of course, but now you can tell in the rhetoric sometimes Max is very critical and he's not loyal to anything or anyone because of his ability, and he can afford not to be. And he'll tell you if the car is rubbish, and he'll tell you when the car's in a sweet spot. So right now it's not there, and you would know if it was because he does not like to be, for example, being involved in shunts from mid-pack. He'd rather have a car that's putting him all the way at the front and he's blasting the field with putting 30 seconds on top of their heads. So yeah, I think Max is playing a huge role in where Red Bull's at. And as far as the first 6 races of the seasons are concerned, it tells you that they're going to be like, podium, great to have, win, fantastic, but realistic championship fight, nah, they're not there.
Prince, maybe there's some storylines that we might not have necessarily been following throughout the last 6 races or so. Kimi Antonelli out at Mercedes, Carlos Sainz, that's a season campaigner as well. Is there anything else that we can look forward to throughout the season, or maybe storylines that we might have missed so far?
Sorry. Carlos Sainz, he's an interesting one because he's someone who had at some point the shine, the limelight, in the sense that the whole market wanted him, and it became a thing, okay, choose where you want to go. He took his sweet time and then chose Williams. Clearly, then it's a decision that he thought out quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see how Williams performs now. They've been doing okay here and there, but I mean, look what happened now at Austria. Brakes on fire, seized brakes. So all of that, and if that becomes a pattern, it's like, oh, Carlos, was this really the right team? Because now look at Sauber. Next year, they're going to be full on Audi, full factory outfits, all the bells and whistles, all the budget in the world. And he might regret that, depending on what happens with Williams. And also, it's not a guarantee that Sauber or Audi in that trim are just going to hit the ground running. I mean, look what happened to Aston Martin. All the money, all the budget, but it's not quite coming together. Some of the young guns, maybe. I've got the grid in front of me here. Ollie Berman, I think he's taking his time about things, sort of bubbling. Also, not making too many headlines at the moment, but I think he's going to come into his own and mature well enough to actually impress. But his long-term trajectory is quite interesting because he's under the Ferrari stable, so to speak. So how he then goes further into his career, it's going to be interesting. But at Haas, I think he's doing pretty well. Bortoleto got into the points this past weekend. That's great for him. He had a rough start in the beginning of the season. To see him in the points, I think that's going to give him good confidence. And mind you, he's managed by Fernando Alonso, and they were racing quite close this past weekend. But I think the one to watch out of all of them is Kimi Antonelli. He's in the fastest car of the rookies. He has I'd say the highest amount of pressure on him amongst all of the rookies. Because of that, he's got a car that's fast, so he has to perform. He's relatively young. So how he takes that responsibility, and does he take it in his stride? Does he struggle a bit? All of those things are really going to be telling. And we just came past one of his tougher weekends where he comes together with someone and he miscalculated. And how he comes back from those are really going to be defining moments in his career. Because we've seen how all of the greats sort of start quite young, the responsibility is thrust on them, and they take it and take it in their stride. So it's that type of season for him. So it's going to be interesting to see.
In terms of the next race, we are heading to Britain, a very, very special race for Lewis Hamilton, as well as Lando Norris. So my question to you is, what can we expect in this race? More of the same from Lando Norris and McLaren? Or can we see Lewis pull a surprise, pull a rabbit out the hat at his favorite circuit?
Lewis can always pull a rabbit out the hat. And this confidence that they have coming out of Austria might be the wind beneath their sails going into the British Grand Prix. So yeah, definitely watch out for that. He's always, especially at that Grand Prix, he's won 8 at the venue, so he can do it again. and he can at least impress again, at the very least, if he doesn't win. And when it comes to McLaren, they are going to be a team to be reckoned with because they're coming into stride, and they were already strong, but now they're really getting into that sweet spot with putting 30 seconds on top of the nearest car that isn't a McLaren speaks volumes.
It's
And at
massive.
Silverstone, their strengths are going to be exalted even more. So watch out. McLaren are going to come in hot. And it's going to be now that thing between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri now. Who wins which side of the McLaren pits is winning. And that's going to be over the entire weekend. From practice all the way to quali, it's going to be very tense between those two. So watch out for that.
Let's put you on the spot, Prince, so that next week when we talk to you, we can keep you accountable. Who's winning the race at the British Grand Prix?
Yeesh, winning the race. Uh, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Lando Norris.
Okay.
No,
Why?
it's Lando's easy, man. Nah, Lando just won a race. That's an easy bet. I'm gonna go Oscar Piastri because we know it's gonna be a McLaren that wins. But I really want to go Oscar Piastri because the odds are stacked up against him, and he's just taken a knock, so he has to swing back now. So, and I think he definitely can. British Grand Prix is the perfect place to do it because it's Lando's home race. So I want to see that.
Certainly. Now, Prince, will keep you accountable next week. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and your Formula One knowledge. Thank you so much, my brother.
A pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the next one.